Hello there, I'm Ed Butler. Welcome to Business Daily from the BBC. Today, the companies lining up in the US, hoping to be the one to buy TikTok.
It's a very exciting new platform that is growing rapidly, and it has gained popularity over the last couple of years, and it is what could be described as a data goldmine.
Microsoft, Twitter, Oracle, they've all thrown their hats into the ring, we think.
I suppose if you're trying to bid up the price, you want to make it seem like lots of people are interested. Maybe they're TikTok folks trying to make it seem like, they're the popular girl dance. This is really not how these deals normally happen.
The weirdness of the TikTok fire sale. That's today's Business Daily on the BBC. There has been an awful lot of talk in the world of tech ever since the president decided to say this about the social media platform TikTok.
It can't be controlled for security reasons by China. Too big, too invasive, and it can't be. And here's the deal. I don't mind if, whether it's Microsoft or somebody else, a big company, a secure company, very, very American company, buy it. Maybe a deal is going to be made. It's a great asset.
In other words, China-owned TikTok, no, but American-owned, great. A quick reminder here, President Trump and many others in Washington are hostile to China. They're suspicious of its commercial incursions into US business. TikTok's parent company is Chinese-controlled. It's called ByteDance. So the argument goes, control popular social platforms with hundreds of millions of Western users like TikTok, and you potentially control huge swathes of valuable consumer data. In TikTok's case, this means all that data is available to Beijing. It's a national security issue, the White House cries, and now the race is on to find a US buyer.
Yeah, guys, wanted to continue to update a story that we're following very closely, given we've never seen anything quite like it, have we? Of course, TikTok, the incredibly popular social media app here in the U.S. And around the world. The U.S. government, of course, saying we will shut TikTok down unless you find a way to transfer all of it to U.S. ownership. And Microsoft, of course, playing a role as the potentially only suitor for the business.
I think it's an exciting I say this as the shareholder at this stage. I think it's an exciting proposition for Microsoft.
Microsoft baffles me on this. TikTok doesn't fit.
Software giant Oracle is in talks to buy TikTok's U.S., Canadian, Australian, and New Zealand assets.
I think a lot of people's reaction is a bit of surprise. I mean, Oracle is entirely an enterprise-facing company, and so a lot of people are a little bit taken aback this morning by this news.
Twitter has reportedly held preliminary talks about a potential deal with TikTok over its U.S. operations.
It can't be controlled for security reasons by China. Too big, too invasive. I don't mind if, whether it's Microsoft or somebody else, a big company, a secure company, very, very American company, buy it. Maybe a deal is going to be made. It's a great asset.
Well, as mentioned there, not just Microsoft and possibly Twitter, but also Oracle is in the game to snag the video app, currently valued at more than $20 billion. What would they all be buying for that amount of money? What's in it for the US firm jumping into this acquisition?
It may just be that, when the president looks at you and says, oh, well, you'll do this, it'll be a great deal for you. You sort of nod along and says, well, yes, Mr. President, we'll look into it. We'll see what we can do. And then it doesn't happen. I think there's a big question how much of this is actually earnest desire to take over the operations of this company.
Russell Brandom, policy editor at the US technology magazine The Verge, has his doubts, as you can hear, about the TikTok fire sale. For one thing, Microsoft, or whoever it is, wouldn't be buying a global social media platform. They'd just be buying a regional one.
The interesting thing to note here is it wouldn't be anything in Asia or Europe or Africa. All of those operations would stay with ByteDance, and Microsoft would take over the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So they wouldn't be buying TikTok overall. They would be buying around 30% of it. And this is where you get into trouble, because a lot of the economic logic of social networks is, you build one product, you build one ad network, and you distribute it all over the world. So there's incredible benefit from scale. And then you're losing a lot of that scale kind of on both sides it's really sort of less than the sum of its parts.
Sure, but isn't that the future of the internet these days? I mean, it looks like that way more and more, with a kind of new digital Cold War brewing between China and the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is just, is TikTok a casualty of that? There's a real danger that when you split it into these pieces, it's just not economically or culturally viable in the way that it was. I think one of the things that makes it so dynamic right now is I can load up my TikTok app here in America and see content from the UK, see content from Korea, see content from Turkey. And so if there's suddenly so much smaller of a pool of videos to draw from just in terms of recommending stuff to me, it's harder to sell ads because you're selling it against a smaller amount of scale. And, it's harder to invest as much in developing the product because you're deploying it to fewer users. But this is also why the idea of cleaving off these 4 countries and not having any ties to the bigger company while the bigger company is still operating this app in Asia and Europe and Africa, that's going to be a really significant technical and business challenge. There's going to be a lot of tech development work just to get back to the TikTok that currently exists and continue it running sort of seamlessly.
There were reports, or have been reports, haven't there, about Oracle being interested as well in this purchase?
Yeah, we've heard rumors about Twitter. I think everyone has kind of gotten a turn. I think this is also one of the things that makes me a little bit nervous. I suppose if you're trying to bid up the price, you want to make it seem like lots of people are interested. Maybe they're TikTok folks trying to make it seem like, they're the popular girl dance. This is really not how these deals normally happen. Normally, there's intense secrecy around every aspect of it, and they only announce it when they have every last detail nailed down because there's such a chance for everything to just fall apart and shareholders on both sides to say, this doesn't actually make sense.
So you're listening to all of this and thinking, this all stinks of politics, really?
I don't know. I don't know how you convince that person, someone who owns a lot of Microsoft stock, that this was happening because it made business sense as opposed to Donald Trump wanted to put something together. Why would you close the deal when there's this obvious out of just saying, oh, well, we tried our best, but it didn't make sense?
Russell Brandom of The Verge magazine, clearly a skeptic. But isn't there more to be considered here? After all, TikTok, in the last couple of years, has become a global phenomenon, going from virtually nowhere outside of mainland China to commanding hundreds of millions of mostly teenage and 20-something eyeballs. That's got to be worth an awful lot of cash, hasn't it? Jason Davis, Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship at INSEAD in Singapore, thinks so. He gave me a quick reminder of the platform's unique strengths.
They leverage AI, artificial intelligence, to give you the videos that you really want to see. So if you're a consumer, it's always monitoring what you're looking at, what you're liking, what you're commenting on in the app, and trying to give you the next video when you swipe by will be something that you'll be very interested in. And that's great for consumers because, very quickly it discovers what you like. It can even become very addictive. The other thing that's very innovative about TikTok is that it truly is global and diverse. I can say at least here in Singapore, when I look at TikTok, I'm getting videos from everywhere, from Asia, from Africa, from the United States, from Europe. It's really found, my deeper preference. I like to watch funny jokes, or I like to watch crazy dances, right? It's really discovered that deeper preference irrespective of the country.
Okay, so now you have basically pulled out 2, it seems to me, of the biggest problems that we have here with this potential sale of part of TikTok. Firstly, the AI is going to be on sale. If you are an acquiring company, you are crucially buying the artificial intelligence, but you are also only buying it for a series of territories, North America, perhaps Australia and so on, not the world as a whole. So we're talking now about this spiraling social network being basically sheared off into territorial areas.
Yeah, that's right. What does Microsoft or one of the other bidders, what do they actually get for this, very large acquisition price? Are these proprietary algorithms? Actually, no. Most of these algorithms are published in academic papers that any of us could look up on the internet at any given time. What they would be buying is not actually the AI algorithm so much as the customizations that have been made for short form video and for this population. Basically, another way to put that is it's the data. It's the data about our behavioral preferences that is so valuable that they've actually built up over time. Now, if I'm Microsoft, can I just buy the US or, Western operations of TikTok? Not all of my preferences are focused on US and Western videos, right? So they're going to need to find a way to, shear off some of those preferences and just focus them on the videos that make sense on, I guess, what would be called the US TikTok app. I think that's possible. I don't think it's a big challenge. The more interesting possibility, though, is what they can do with the know-how. You can imagine there are hundreds, if not thousands, of TikTok engineers, most of them in China. Are they a part of the acquisition? That's really the key. It's the expertise, the technical expertise that they've built up over time to be able to do these customizations.
If it were Microsoft, for example, would you say it was a good deal for them? Or do you think it makes sense?
Over time, I've come to realize that an American big tech really benefits a lot from this acquisition. There's the technical talent, there's the platform itself, the possibilities for commercialization. A company like Microsoft in particular might use it to fill a gap. If you think about Microsoft's product line, where do they have a big gap? They have a big gap in social, in video, and also in the demographic where TikTok is most important. Mainly that generation Zoom, those folks in the 20s. So for Microsoft, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Is ByteDance desperate to sell?
I think so. I think any company faced with a presidential executive order like this would be desperate and would be looking very hard to sell this.
Professor Jason Davis at INSEAD Business School in Singapore. That's what he thinks. Not everyone is quite so sure. Here's the view this week of Professor Scott Galloway, the NYU Stern tech and marketing guru. He was speaking on the issue in his weekly Pivot podcast.
Well, my prediction is you're going to see a bunch of companies leak a rumor that they're being acquired or they're in talks to acquire TikTok. And President Xi Jinping will pull a Sheryl Sandberg and act very earnest and do nothing. He's 78 days out from the election, so they'll pretend to entertain these talks. The Chinese superpower is their long-term thinking, and they win here. So there's going to be a half a dozen companies, quote unquote, in serious talks to acquire TikTok. TikTok will not be acquired by an American firm. I don't think the Chinese are going to blink on this one.
Well, I did tell you this was attracting all the chatter. The thing is, though, this is an executive order. Washington has explicitly said TikTok has till mid-September to sort out a buyer or the app gets shut down. Would Donald Trump really U-turn in the middle of an election campaign? There is another question as well. What difference will any of this wrangle over ownership make to the core problem? The one about Chinese meddling in US firms and consumer data. For an answer to that, I sought out Sandra Wachter. She is an associate professor at the Oxford Internet Institute, and she researches data ethics.
Algorithms, for example, are being used to infer the preferences and the activities and the interests of the users, and they try to anticipate what kind of things the users might be interested in, what kind of goods or services they might enjoy. What we don't know is that that data can be used to infer extremely sensitive information about us. I'm able to infer your sexual orientation and your ethnicity, maybe even your religion or your political leanings, your gender identity. All of that is something that we're giving up whenever we're engaging with those technologies because the algorithms are able to infer that about us.
So then, if you are Donald Trump or a leading figure in the US administration, does the transfer of this company to an American-based owner, such as Microsoft, does that fix the problem?
No, because you have two problems that will remain the same. The first problem is, what is the company that is acquiring or holding the data able to infer about you? What kind of intimate details are they able to infer? That will stay the same regardless of who owns or holds the company. And the second problem is, who else get access to that data? And that problem is also not going away. At the moment, we might have concerns with China, but we have seen legal battles where the public sector wanted to have access to data that is being held by the private sector. So the same concern will actually stay the same.
Right, so there is a global marketplace in this data, and pretty much anybody with a deep pocket can access that.
Yes, and I think it might make more sense to think about regulation rather than thinking about acquisition. If we are actually interested in governing how we share and trade and collect data, and if we want to regulate the ad tech industry in a certain way, I think international frameworks are much more fruitful than trying to buy up all the companies in the hope that I can control the data that they have.
In your view, what would that regulation look like?
I think we made a very good first step in Europe, actually. For the last 2 years, we had the European Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, which came into force and is now applicable in all the member states. But not just in the member states in the European Union. Everybody who is a third-party country, for example, the US or even China, if they want to make business with the European Union, they have to adhere to those standards. So it's our actual first attempt to think about international and global regulation when it comes to data protection, because that's really what we need to do. Data doesn't care about geography or boundaries. Data is global, and that's the same way we have to think about regulation.
Are the United States or China or anyone else seriously showing signs of being ready to accept the concept of global data regulation that you describe?
I think the nature of law develops as society is developing. And I think we are much more open now to think about global regulation than we have been in the last years. And you can see that a lot of frameworks that are being developed outside of Europe, they're starting to mimic wordings that we have in GDPR because it's advancing to be a global standard. And it is a very good framework. It's a very good first step. It has problems, of course, but every law has problems because it's never a done product. But you can see that a lot of countries are actually trying to comply with that standard because Europe is still the biggest market on the planet.
The view of Sandra Wachter of the Oxford Internet Institute. That's it for today's programme. Edwin Lane was the producer. On Monday, we're going to be looking at nudging. How do we respond when people, marketers, politicians try and amend our behaviour for the better? Join us for that.
My grandfather worked on the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, and it troubles me. It also troubled some of the scientists who developed it. Find out more in The Bomb, a brand new podcast from the BBC World Service, available now.